Hello, this is Tony Ben, the M14 video guy. Just want to welcome you back to my M14 video page, and today I have a special video I just wanted to do. A couple of months ago, I was cruising my Instagram page and I noticed that I was followed by a company called Lothar Walther, and I thought that was kind of odd, and I had no idea why. I was like, it seems like a big company. They're a barrel maker. They make some pretty really good barrels, but in the M14 world, really, there's only Krieger or Criterion, and recently Buell Defense and Douglas and whoever Springfield Armory uses for their barrels. So when it comes to M14 barrels, choices are limited. So I went to their Instagram page and I just started cruising some of their pictures, and I noticed what looked to be M14 barrels, and I zoomed in for a closer look and I noticed that they actually were, and I thought that was very odd. I was like, well, okay, is this a international site or something like that? And so I went onto their website and I looked at Lothar Walther's website, and they did indeed have M14 barrels for sale, and I thought to myself, have I been under a rock for the last 10 years, not knowing that people in the US have been using Lothar Walther barrels for their M14s for quite a while, and I just the last to know about it. So I did some searching to make sure that I wasn't stupid and that I wasn't just missing something. And my search basically confirmed that the only people that up to this point that have been using Lothar Walther barrels were people in Europe. And after checking out their website, I noticed that they said they were going to be at SHOT Show 2020, so it kind of affirmed to me that no, this was these barrels are supposed to be available in the U.S. So I gave them a call, and it turns out they had an office in Georgia, and I got to talking to one of the representatives, John McBrayer, and we had a pretty good talk, and he basically filled me in on the status of Lothar Walther M14 barrels, and basically what he was telling me was that they've been producing a lot of barrels for other firearms platforms, and they're really trying to expand their U.S. market. So a lot of the barrels they're making here in the U.S., but the M14 barrels right now are still being made in Europe, and they're importing them, and they're just starting to introduce them to the U.S. market, and just not a lot of people knew about it. So after talking a bit, one thing led to another, and I had a barrel in the mail being sent my way. And so they ended up sending me a heavy profile 22-inch M14 barrel with a 1 in 10-inch twist. And as I was talking to John, he told me a little bit of the background of the company. According to him, he said Lothar Walther invented button rifling back in the 1930s, and I thought that was very interesting. He was telling me that their steel is LW19 European machine gun steel. So this barrel here, it's actually it's not stainless. This is not a stainless steel barrel. This barrel is actually a chromoly barrel. It's just in the white. So right now they don't offer any stainless steel M14 barrels or barrels that are have a phosphate finish or anything like that. So any barrel you get from them is going to be in the white. So that's what this one is. But I didn't want to really bother finishing it. I just wanted to build a rifle with it and see how it did, and just get some initial impressions, and to see how it would do. What I ended up doing was I actually sold, and I took one of my rifles, one of my really good performing rifles actually. It was an LRB, and had kind of a 3/4 heavy nitrided 5R barrel, and I sold that one. I kept the majority of the parts, and I sold just the receiver bolt and the barrel. Kept the rest of the parts to build this rifle. So this rifle, I want to also give a big thanks to Lou at LRB. I thought that this rifle, the barrel they sent me was being a full heavy profile barrel. I wanted it to be built on a rear lug receiver, and I wanted it to be built on a forged receiver. And I reached out to Lou, and he hooked me up with a good deal on an LRB rear lug receiver that he happened to have. He had a couple left in stock, and so he set one aside for me. And so I ended up building this rifle with a forged rear lug LRB receiver, a Beulah bolt, and a Walther barrel, and the rest of the parts are basically GI parts that are nitrided from my previous rifle that I had built. For this particular rifle, I really wanted to do my best to isolate the barrel itself from the rest of the build. So this is actually going to be a build that's going to be done in stages. So eventually I'm going to bed this into a heavy Macmillan stock to see how it does, and then I'm eventually going to bed it into a heavy walnut Phasian that I have for kind of a down the road dream build, which it looks like it's going to happen now. But for an initial testing, just to isolate the barrel accuracy itself, I went ahead and used I call this my #1 JAE chassis. This is the chassis that JAE sent me a couple of years ago to do a test and evaluation on. And unfortunately, if you haven't heard yet, JAE closed its doors earlier this year, just a couple of months ago. I think it was in July, I believe, is when they shut down. So if you have one of these chassis systems, hang on to them. They don't make them anymore. So in my opinion, this is probably the easiest chassis system that you can use to build a really accurate M14 platform on. And you'll see later as the results prove that the choice on the receiver and the choice on the chassis was spot on, because I got some really, really impressive results. So, and I also like to thank Loophole. They sent me the scope a couple of years ago to do various testing of all kinds of different things that I try to test for the M14 world and stuff. So definitely a combination of the chassis and the scope. Everything came together really, really well on this rifle. Eventually I'm going to have to pull the barrel and have it finished, or maybe I just might send it all out to be DLC'd or something like that. So I still have to decide on the barrel finish, but right now it's shooting very, very well, and we'll get to that in a bit. So if you're a steel person, if you really, really want to know what kind of barrel steel this is, and you're big into metallurgy and stuff like that, this is basically European LW19 machine gun steel, sulfurless, which is an equivalent of somewhere between the US equivalent of 4337 or 4340. And if you're really, I'm not a metallurgist. These numbers mean absolutely nothing to me. I build the rifles, I test them, and there you go. But some of the people that are really, really big into numbers, this will mean something to them. It's there's the composition number of 34CRNIM06, and the hardness is in the mid-20s. Now, when they ship these barrels out, they only have a 308 roughing chamber done to them, so it's going to be short chambered. I actually, LRBs, in my experience, they hand time quite a bit earlier and require a bit more shoulder turning on a match grade barrel to get it to time to zero. So it requires a bit more shoulder turning, which in turn means that you actually have to cut the chamber a little deeper. This one, I want to say I probably had to cut maybe 20 or 30 thousandths into the chamber before I reached target headspace. Other things to note is right now they currently only offer 308 barrels in standard profile, medium weight profile, heavy profile. They also offer a SOCOM 16 barrel, and they also offer a 6.5 Creedmoor barrel in GI profile. A lot of people have told me that they really want, it would be more appealing if it was a medium weight barrel, and I kind of agree. So perhaps they'll come out with that. But what they also said was, again, they really want to expand their barrel market here in the US, and if somebody wants to do a special run or a group buy of, say, 5 or more barrels, if they want to do a medium weight profile of 6.5 Creedmoor barrels, they would absolutely do something like that. They also said that they would offer ICR rifling or polygonal rifling with an order of 5 or more barrels as well. So they do have the capacity to make M14 barrels, and they can modify things a little bit. Again, they can, you know, they can make a 6.5 Creedmoor, 7mm 08, 243, basically anything that's a 308 case head that will fit in a 308 magazine, something that's 308 case based. They can make that special chamber. You might have to just mess around with the gas port size, but they'll work with somebody if somebody wants to order a special run of barrels in a different chambering other than 308. And if they want to change the rifling to polygonal rifling or ICR rifling as well. So I thought that was really very interesting. Something that some people may be interested in, if that, you know, is something that they're definitely into. You know, I think there's 6mm XC or something like that. There's all kinds of different chamberings that are available in 308 or with the 308 type bolt face. And they also said they would do the same thing for a Garand if you wanted to order a Garand barrel chambered in what is it, 33806 or something like that. They would do, or even an M1 Garand barrel in 308 Winchester, they would do that as well. So if somebody is looking for, again, quantities of 5 or more, that's really the only prerequisite that they had, was ordering 5 or more. Anyway, enough about that. Also for the build, I chose, again, I wanted to really squeeze out as much accuracy as I could. I went with a shooting sight trigger. I pulled this off of my first build I ever did, which was my M25, which was also an LRB, and which was an absolute dream to shoot. So it's got the shooting sight trigger tuned down to probably about 3 3/4 pounds, and it doesn't double. Another thing I want to do with this barrel, because it is a full-on heavyweight barrel, I didn't want to use just my standard chamber reamers that I have, which is basically M118 long range and M852. I have a good friend by the name of Nez Rongero. He's a Texas State high power champion, and he was kind enough to gift me his own proprietary chamber reamer. He had a spare and he asked me if I wanted it. I said absolutely, and this is a tighter chamber reamer than any one that I've ever used, and it's definitely one that I wouldn't use on a customer build unless they're a really proficient hand loader, and I give them the dimensions, and they would really be careful about how they hand load ammo. So this is a pretty tight chamber, and I have all the dimensions and everything like that. And so this is the first time I've ever used this chamber reamer, and the beauty of it was, hey, if it didn't work out, if things just weren't working out, I could always cut it with my other proven chamber reamers that are bigger. I would just cut over his and use something that I've always used before. But the choice of using that chamber reamer was actually a very, very good one. And again, I'll show you later. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and take the action apart, and I'll show you kind of what the barrel looks like under the handguard. So here we are. We have the action out of the chassis now, and you can see basically the barrel again. It's in the white. It looks stainless, but it's not. So this is the full. Again, I opted to have the full heavy profile. I really wanted to see what their top of the line barrel, how it would perform. One thing to note is that none of their barrels come with an operating rod guide, so this one I had to purchase separately. But a standard heavy operating rod guide will fit just perfectly on here. I didn't have to knurl the barrel or anything like that. It worked great, fit really good, and I went ahead and it was a really good press fit, and I went ahead and drilled the holes through. Went ahead and drilled the holes through the operating rod guide and drove the roll pins in, and everything held really good. So one thing to note is that it's kind of interesting, even though it's a heavy profile barrel, the contour forward of the front band is a GI profile, so it actually thins down a little bit here around the gas cylinder, and from the gas lock to the flash suppressor. As to where other heavyweights and mediums are a little thicker in this area, this one's a little thinner, but I didn't see it affect any performance at all. Again, it was extremely, it was a really impressive barrel as far as performance goes. The rifling inside looked absolutely fantastic and superb. I ran a bore scope down it. If you look at my other video on Lothar Walther rifling with the Tesla bore scope, I tested out a new bore scope with it, and the rifling was super clean, and it was really impressive. So there's their heavy profile barrel. You can see there. So any scratches or marks were made by me. This thing came pretty much flawless. So just a side note, I just wanted to mention that I wanted to mention the fit of a GI gas cylinder and flash suppressor to the barrel, and they fit, in my opinion, they fit just right. It was perfect. It wasn't too tight and wasn't too loose, which if it's too tight, then in my opinion, it disrupts the bullet as it travels down the barrel. If it's too loose, it rattles around and induces vibrations. But this was actually just the right tightness. Not so loose that I could put it on by hand, but enough that some light taps with a hammer seated it just fine. Same thing with the flash suppressor. So everything fits on real snug, but not too tight, not overly tight. What I'm probably going to do in the future with this rifle is I'm going to cut the shoulder off a little bit. I'm going to cut the shoulder back a little bit. Probably going to put this between the barrel and the receiver face. And this is going to be a double lugged rifle. And I'm going to bed this into a Macmillan because, like I said, this is a LRB rear lugged receiver, and this is going to eventually be bedded into a Macmillan stock. The nice thing about the JAE chassis is it still has a cutout for a rear lugged receiver, so I could still run it in there. So again, I want to thank Lou and the fine folks at LRB for helping me out with this receiver. All right, so now what you guys are all really interested about is how the rifle actually shot. So for my range testing, I have only used one box of Federal XM80 to do a barrel break-in, and I used Federal 175 grain gold medal match. Okay, so during my barrel break-in procedure, I just used 20 rounds, and I used an SR1 target set at 50 yards, and then just to get it on paper for a couple of shots, and then I moved out to 100 yards. So basically at 100 yards, I mean even at 50 yards I was somewhere in here, and then as I moved it out to 100 yards, my first couple of shots were up here, and then I corrected, and then the rest of them were basically all in here. So so even with XM80, just ball ammo, straight up ball ammo, with the way this was set up, it would hold the 10 ring with a high X count if I had the scope dialed in. So like I said, these top ones up here were the very first few rounds, and then I brought the scope down a couple of clicks, and the rest of them all fell in here. I think I only dropped one out of the 10 into the 9. The rest of them were all pretty much basically in here. So that was it for that. And then what I went ahead and did is I loaded up 5 rounds of 175 grain and did a initial accuracy test at 100 yards. And what you'll basically see here is this first target measured 0.81. So for the 175 grain stuff, I ran 5 rounds through five rounds of 175 grain gold medal match, and my very first group right off the bat with match ammo at 100 yards, sub MOA, 0.810 inches at 100 yards. And I thought to myself, wow, do I just stay there? Do I just call it, okay, that was really good, and do I just stop while I'm ahead? So I went ahead and I decided, no, I want to see how this thing does again. So I went ahead and I fired 5 more rounds. I did a scope correction, and I proceeded to shoot a 0.522 inch group at 100 yards. So here I am 10 rounds into my accuracy testing with this rifle, and I've officially shot the smallest group that I've ever shot out of an M14 that I have personally built myself. So I think that right there alone speaks for itself. My previous grouping, my previous record was about, I think it was .574. It was, this is .498 MOA. My previous record was .52 MOA, I believe, with a different barrel. So again, right off the bat, I shot a personal best through an M14. So 3 weeks go by, and this is we went to last weekend, October 19th, and I took it out again. I had 3 rifles to test, and from a cold bore, I went ahead and threw in 5 more rounds, 175 grain gold medal match, and it was a very rainy day, which is why the target's kind of chewed up. But anyway, 5 rounds of gold medal match from a cold bore, 0.634 inches at 100 yards, with no sight corrections, nothing at all. And I was just blown away, just very, very impressed by the performance of that rifle. 0.634 inches, center to center. Okay, so I wanted to run some more groups, but I had a couple of rifles to test, and there was a guy out there. He saw my rifle, and he kind of looked at me funny, and he said, "What kind of Archangel stock is that?" And I just kind of chuckled. I'm like, "Well, this is the stock that the Archangel copied." And I decided, well, you know what, I'm going to be a good sport, and I loaded up 5 rounds, and I handed him a magazine. I said, "Here, why don't you go ahead and send 5 rounds downrange with this rifle." So this is a rifle he had never shot. He had an M1A loaded in an Archangel stock. He actually never even shot it that day, but he had it sitting there, and I wanted him to see the difference between a full custom rifle and just a standard M1A. And without ever getting any familiarization shots with this rifle, I just warned him about the trigger. I said, "Be very, the trigger's real light." I said it's under 4 pounds. And with that, he went ahead and he shot a .650 inch group from a rifle he's never shot at all. All right, so there you see it. A guy has no experience with this rifle at all. He's not familiar with it at all. Jumps behind it. I give him a magazine with 5 rounds of 175 grain gold medal match, and he basically almost matched my group. I just did a small sight correction for him before he shot, and you can see there was my group here on this side. This was his group over there. So again, I'm really impressed by this rifle. Pretty much I'm happy if I can hold about an inch, plus or minus 0.1 or so, for a rifle that you build. With an M14, it's very difficult to make them shoot under an inch. Sometimes even with the best components, you can do everything right, and it may shoot 3/4 inch, or it may shoot 1.3 inches. And sometimes you just have no control over it. You can literally build the best way you possibly can, and it may not shoot as good as you like it to. This particular rifle, this is my first impression with this barrel, and again, like I said, the first Lothar Walther barrel I've ever had, first M14 I've ever built with a Lothar Walther barrel, and I basically shot a personal record with a rifle that I built. So when you start getting to this kind of accuracy, when you're talking like hovering around the half MOA, at that point you're really talking about the difference between the quality of the build, the overall build at that point. So based off of my sample of 1, this initial impression that I have of this particular barrel, this is a very good candidate for basically a top level M14 build. So again, They make other profile barrels too. I just so happened to pick their heavy M14 profile. I wanted to see what their heavy would do, and this is what it would do. I would expect from any other barrel maker, whether it's Criterion or Krieger, I would expect a medium weight to shoot somewhere around 1 MOA. Heavy weights is when you start expecting 3/4 to maybe half MOA if everything is built properly and if everything goes to plan. And kind of like in this case, everything seemed to have went together as planned. And this would be kind of like, these are the results that you really are looking for when you're building a heavy barreled M14, whether it's in a GI or whether it's in a Macmillan fiberglass stock or a JAE style chassis. Again, if I was to purchase a Lothar Walther medium weight barrel, I would probably expect somewhere maybe between, you know, and this goes for Krieger or Criterion or Buell or anybody else. I would expect somewhere between 1 to 1.5 MOA or 1 to 1.5 inches. If you get, sometimes you may get better, sometimes you may not. There's a lot of factors to take into consideration about group size. Sometimes the barrel has little to do with why it may or may shoot good or may not shoot good. But again, I just tried to do my best to isolate as many variables as I could to basically highlight the barrel accuracy only. And based off of what I can see here, these barrels are made really, really well, and they're very accurate. And I went online and I asked people what their experiences were with Lothar Walther barrels, and people that had air guns or 50 caliber BMGs, you know, because apparently they make really small bore, and they make really big bore barrels. And everybody was saying that they're, you know, or AR barrels or 308 barrels, people were saying that they shoot fantastic. And so this is, again, my first experience with a Lothar Walther barrel, and an M14 barrel at that. So, well, that about wraps it up for this video. This is basically the first of a couple of videos that I'm going to do on this particular rifle. I'll do another video again when it's in the Macmillan stock, and as I see how it does at different ranges. I'll probably try this again at 600 yards, and if I ever get a chance to get out to 1,000 yards, I'll report back and I'll tell you all how it does, as well as with different loads and everything as well. So if you're looking for another option for a premium barrel, definitely consider Lothar Walther. I'm very impressed with the performance of the one they sent me. And it seems like if their other profiles and their other barrels are as good as this, they should do well. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.